the Emberlit wood-burning stove versus the Nimblewill Nomad Little Dandy wood-burning stove. Is this production marvel that much better than this DIY sheet metal contraption? Well, let's compare them. Alright, let's start off with the Nimblewill Nomad Little Dandy wood-burning stove. So this little contraption was named after a gentleman whose trail name was Nimblewill Nomad. He's famous for having hiked most of the major trails throughout North America, and didn't begin until he was about 60 years old when he hiked the Appalachian Trail from Florida right through to Quebec. He has books written about him and a number of documentaries done about him as well. But this is something he developed in 1998. He thought there would be no logistics trail, no need to find fuel to burn, fossil fuels to burn. All he would have to do is find sticks along the trail. And he designed this little contraption, and he made the designs available to everyone on the internet. So this is something that I made up myself. I went to Canadian Tire, picked up some 22 gauge sheet metal, downloaded the templates off of the internet, and I'll provide that link to those templates for anybody who's interested. Cut it out with a pair of metal shears, used a little drill, and put it together. Dremel tool helped with the slotting, and I'll give you some close-ups of this in a little while. So this was my first wood-burning stove that I had ever made for myself. You know, it's a very effective little stove. It's surprising, considering what's available on the market today, just how well this little stove works. Now, it has some minuses. It warps very easily. The metal is very thin. It weighs probably 6 ounces, maybe 8 ounces at the most, which is very light. But that lightness comes at a sacrifice, which is the sturdiness. And while it's sturdy in use, over time it has warped, it has made it a little harder to fit it together, and it will rust if I don't take care of it, but so far, you know, it's worked out very well. I like this so much that this is what led me to start looking at the Emberlit stove, which I'll show you now. The Emberlit wood-burning stove, produced by Merkwares, owner McHale. The earliest references I can find bring this back to about 2005. It may be older than that, and I'm not quite sure. This is known as the second generation Emberlit stove, a little upgrade from the original generation, made from stainless steel, the original. There are now, of course, ultralight versions made out of titanium, and there are smaller versions known as the Fire Ant, made out of stainless steel and titanium as well. But this is the stainless steel version. So like a lot of my bushcraft equipment, this one was purchased for me as a gift on Father's Day by my family a few years ago, and it is my go-to stove when I'm out in the woods. Absolutely love using this thing. And I'll give you a close-up of these things, both stoves disassembled, just to give you an idea as to how flat they pack down, because that's one of the major advantages of these stoves, is they pack down very flat and store very easily. Now this stove weighs between 11 and 12 ounces, so it's a little heavier than the other one, but that's made up for in sturdiness. Being made out of stainless steel, it has lasted a lot longer without any corrosion. It has warped a little bit, but that hasn't affected either putting it together or its use in any way. It just doesn't lay quite as flat as when it was brand new, but still a great little stove. So, the question I posed to you at the beginning of this video is, the Emberlit or the Little Dandy? Which one is better? Well, neither. It's a matter of what you want. If you have access to metal, such as sheet metal, which is like the one I bought at Canadian Tire, you have a few tools around the house, such as shears and a drill, and a Dremel tool, which would be helpful. Not necessary, but very helpful. You can make one of these little stoves and it will serve you very well. Total cost, maybe $10, not including the tools, which I already had. You have to look at the time you're going to invest in making this as well. Downloading and printing off the templates, gluing it to the metal, cutting the metal out, drilling it, and assembling it, and trying it out to make sure that it fits. And there's a little bit of working back and forth to make sure everything fits properly. But once done, you've got a very inexpensive, very well-functioning stove. And you can see the similarities in design. They're both sheet metal slide together stoves, but Mikhail did considerable research that made improvements on with his Emberlit stove that have advantages over the Little Dandy. So the Emberlit stove, it's a little taller. That adds to the chimney effect to some degree, pulls air in and forces it up through the material that's burning for a more efficient burn. But what you're looking at is an expenditure of money. If you neither have the time, the tools, nor the talent to put together one of the Little Dandy wood stoves, then by all means look at one of the Emberlit stoves. Right now I know that on wildcoasttents.com, which is a company that operates out of Nova Scotia, you can purchase the Emberlit stove for $31.99 Canadian, plus shipping of course. That's not bad. You know, if I had it to do all over again, I probably still would have made this stove. But I know that not everybody wants to take the time to work on making one for themselves. So the Emberlit's a very good choice. Very cost effective, very sturdy, and will last you maybe not a lifetime, but I'd say pretty close to it. So there you go. The Emberlit wood burning stove, production made, very high quality. The Little Dandy wood burning stove, made in my basement. Not exceptionally high quality, but very functional just the same. The choice is yours. I like them both. Let's take some close-ups of them. Alright, so this is a close-up of the Little Dandy wood burning stove. As you can see, it has a number of holes in the bottom plate to provide airflow. All around the bottom there are holes drilled to provide airflow in through the bottom plate. Simple sheet metal construction. If I get in close, you can probably see where the Dremel tool was used to cut the slots through the metal, so the thing would slide together. Good size compartment for the wood to sit in. Alright. So this stove is no stranger. Most people have seen one of these. I know a number of you already have them. What makes it different from the Nimblewill Little Dandy is that the bottom plate does not have any holes in them. I know there are some copies and clones available that do have holes in them. I haven't found the fact that there's no ventilation along the bottom to be a problem, because there is sufficient ventilation coming in from the side as well as through the feed port on the front. Now the only thing I've done with this stove to make it a little bit more efficient, and this is just my personal observations, is I have taken my Dremel tool and you can see little tiny cuts on all four posts. And the reason I've done that is the crossbars can now sit on top like this. And what that does is it raises the pot off of the stove that 3/4 of an inch or so. And what I've found is that by lifting that up, there's more airflow coming through the stove and up. Quite often when you've got a good fire going and you put a pot on top of the stove, it seems to dampen the fire down because it restricts airflow. So just by putting the crossbars on top of the stove in those little notches, we increase airflow significantly and I get more efficient burn. Other than that, it's a stock Emberlit. Alright, I'll show you these when they're disassembled to see comparison just how small and flat they lay when they're in their packages. So you know there's a number of different ways you can use your Emberlit. I think the design is intended for feed through the small port. It's one of the nice things about the Emberlit stove is that you don't have to process all your wood down into little tiny bits in order to feed it into the stove. Once you get your fire lit, you can take additional pieces of wood, longer, feed them in through the port on the side, and as they burn, just keep pushing them in. Today I started the stove, and I didn't show it, but I started the stove with a top-down burn, so filled the stove full of small sticks, little birch bark on top, a little bit of feathering on top of that, lit it from the top and let the coals fall down into the sticks and get the stove going. One advantage you can see of those crossbars mounted the way I mentioned earlier is that I can feed small sticks in through the top as well. So if I need just a little boost of heat, throw something in through the top. You can see how well the flames are rising through the top of the stove now underneath my canteen cup. In another video, I use this stove kind of like a bird's nest. Put some bracken in it, some dried bracken, some birch bark, lit it with a piece of char cloth that I had ignited with my Fresnel lens. Just blew it into flames while holding it in my hands. That works quite well. Well, I'm going to stop now and eat my lunch. What's on the menu? Let's have a look. That's not going to work. Soup. A little different soup this time. It has some chicken in it and some other vegetables and some rice, some mung beans, some quinoa, a number of different healthy things. Only takes a few minutes to rehydrate this way. And I'll be enjoying a nice warm lunch on this cool fall day. So you may recall in an earlier video I did on the IKEA hobo stove that one downside to those stoves were their bulk, that they took up a bit of space. Now mine was fortunate enough to fit inside the pot that I use, and then I can put inside of that a few other things, maybe the food or the fire kit and that type of thing. But here's where these collapsible wood stoves really shine. There is this is the Nimblewill. You can see, all told, maybe a 1/4 inch thick. And that's even as it's a little warped and taking up some space. And here is the Emberlit. A little thicker because it's a little bit more warped, but no less compact really. Those things slide down in just about any space inside of my pack. So there's the major advantage for this stove. Is not only does it work well, but it's very compact, goes together easy, and stores well in my backpack. There you have it, folks. The second in my short series on small twig stoves or stick stoves. In this video we looked at the Emberlit stove versus the Nimblewill Nomad Little Dandy stove. Both effective at their job. One just requires some skill with sheet metal. The other just requires a few dollars expenditure. Both will serve you well. My preference is to take the Emberlit because I know that it stands up well, goes together well, and always works well for me. In fact, I'm just enjoying a cup of coffee I just made after lunch on my Emberlit stove. So, until next time, if you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, then by all means do subscribe. Hit the like button, share the video with your friends, and as always, leave comments below. And until next time, see you in the woods. Bye for now.